Number 5. Megatron and Starscream. These two get their own slot because they are the most famous Decepticons, and thus get the most screen time, which leads to them turning out the more screwed up. Now, before I explain what's going on, it's important that I make perfectly clear how Megatron and Starscream are done right. Megatron is, of course, the opposite of Optimus. He wants to change things for the good of Cybertron, but he wants it done out of tyranny and order. With his mighty arm cannon, he is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful Cybertronian. He is also very clever and strategic, yet arrogant to a fault. And he belongs to nobody. It has to be his rule or no one else. But he also knows when to use others for his purposes, even to the point of being allies with the Autobots at times. Like Megatron, Starscream wants nothing but to rule. He wants Cybertron to himself, but his delusions of grandeur make him reckless, and he rarely thinks before he acts, making his plans to dethrone Megatron easily foiled. And even if he does rule, his lack of strategy and wisdom, on top of not being especially powerful, keeps him from ruling for very long. At the end of the day, Starscream is more talk than anything else, making it a wonder Megatron doesn't kill him himself. Now, with all that said, this raises the million-dollar question: was it really that hard to get all of that right? Why basically take all of the good/memorable characteristics about these two and hardly do a thing about them? Starscream, while showing a little bit of his lack of strategy at times, turns out to act more loyal to Megatron. In fact, that was pretty much the first thing he says in the first movie. Oh sure, the end of that movie has him fleeing after the battle, implying that he plans to take leadership with Megatron dead, but in the next film, he instantly is loyal to Megatron again, and for some reason is a hunchback to boot. Granted, in some versions, he does act loyal to Megatron, but only until something happens that gives Starscream the chance to assume leadership. But here, he starts off acting loyal, and that's all he does. There never was a subplot where he tried to kill Megatron or tried to be the leader of the Decepticons. Heck, he never even says a line that implies that he wants to do either of those things. I mean, come on. The third movie begins with Megatron in exile, wounded and weak. And yet Starscream stays by his side as his hunchback sidekick without so much as a thought. So we never get debatably Starscream's most famous characteristic of trying to become the leader of the Decepticons. Oh, and let's not forget that he loves to spit a lot.
You can't hide, boy!
Now, during the first movie, Megatron seemed to be okay. He did appear menacing and all, even if he didn't have his arm cannon, which they should not have left out, but he still had some embarrassing moments. The biggest one? Having a teenage boy kill him. Yes, I know I made this a good thing when talking about Sam, but it's freaking Megatron! Like I said before, he's basically the Darth Vader or Voldemort of the franchise. And here, of all the ways for him to die after years of fighting against the Autobots, he gets killed by a boy they had just met instead of Optimus or some other Autobot kill him. How embarrassing is that?
That still only counts as one!
Things get even worse in Revenge of the Fallen, where he is resurrected, but it turns out that he's been acting as the Fallen servant the entire time.
My master failed you on Earth.
Really? So throughout the first movie, where we thought that he was the leader of the Decepticons, and there was no one else, we learned that he was fighting for some other guy this entire time? You know, I'm not sure if you guys did your homework on this. But, well, why don't I let the real Megatron explain it to you?
They belong to nobody!
Did you get any of that? Did ya? Did ya? No? Well, no wonder this thing happened! And then in the next film, he seems to have his rightful place, and even uses Sentinel against the Autobots. So maybe this time he will show himself to be the biggest, most powerful, wimpy, pathetic, and dim-witted punching bag. For heaven's sakes, just look at him! Sentinel's pushing him around and he's hardly even showing any emotion to what is happening to him. I would think that one of the most powerful and well-known sci-fi villains would at some point bother to fight back. And eventually, he does fight back. But right after that, Optimus takes his head off with only one arm left to hold his axe. And just like with Sentinel, he just stands there and basically takes it like he doesn't even care. So to recap, Megatron is one of the most powerful Transformers and is the leader of the Decepticons who is a slave to no one, and yet here, he's killed by a teenager, turns out to work for someone else, gets his rightful place only to be pushed around, tries to get his position back, but ends up just standing there while a wounded Optimus Prime takes his head clean off. My goodness. Of all the ways to give us the two most well-known Decepticons in the whole franchise, Michael Bay and everyone who took part of these films did a rather interesting job of taking almost every unthinkably wrong step.